Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My topic of presentation is transplantation surgical complication. First of all, introduction. Kidney transplantation is considered the most cost-effective therapy for end-stage renal disease. Since the first human kidney transplantation by Joseph Murray in 1954, improvement in the mortality and morbidity have been attributed to the patient selection, advance in surgical techniques, perioperative management, and immunosuppressive regime. In the early era of kidney transplant, surgical complication was a major cause of graft loss between 1960 to 1980. The estimated incidence was around 20% with the improvement of surgical techniques. The frequency of these complications has dropped significantly. Currently, it is estimated that in large transplant centers, the incidence of surgical complication is less than 5%. In general, the result of renal transplantation have improved gradually as consequences of advance in medical and immunosuppressive therapy and progress in surgical techniques. Post-transplant urological complications are usual with the range of 2.5 to 57% in most cases and can cause significant morbidity and mortality. Results have been improved over the past decade as direct application of less invasive urological diagnostic and therapeutic techniques and of the surgical complications. Surgical complications of after renal transplantation can be classified mainly as vascular and urological. In vascular, we have arterial and venous thrombosis, renal artery stenosis, lymphocyte, and hemorrhage. And urological, we have urethral obstruction with urethral reflex, urinary fistula. Although other types of complications are not uncommon, like graft rupture and hematoma. These complications can occur early in the intraoperative, immediate postoperative period, or later, and imply increased morbidity, hospitalization, and cost. Urological complications are most common surgical complications after renal transplantation, causing a significant morbidity and mortality. Recently, the incidence of urological complications after renal transplantation has increased to 2.5 to 12.5%. Urological complications represent an important cause of morbidity, delaying normal graft functioning, and some cases lead graft loss and patient death. The most frequent urological complication after kidney transplantation involve the urethrovesical anastomosis, fistula, stenosis, and reflex. With the frequency ranging from 5 to 10% in different series. Urological complications. We have urinary fistula. This is leakage of urine from the lymphatic system. It can occur at the level of bladder, ureter, and urine calcium. The leakage of urine can be collected around the graft, move to the retroperitoneal scrotum, or may manifest through the incision. The average prevalence in many studies is around 5.7% in general. Most urinary leaks are the result of urological problems, failure of urethrovesical anastomosis, or ischemia and necrosis of distal urethral stomach. In the majority of surgeons now employ an extravesical uretral hysterectomy techniques for implantation of ureter. There are shorter ureter and decreased likelihood of ischemia, and limited hysterectomy that rarely leads to leakage from the bladder. Diagnosis. For being the most common surgical complication of kidney transplantation, urinary fistula is easily diagnosed. In doubtful cases, there is need to exclude the lymphocyte as main differential diagnosis. Biochemical analysis of liquid is characterized by having elevated level of serum creatinine, urea, and potassium. In the lymphocyte, creatinine should be similar to blood. Urinary leaks are often suspected because of increased drainage from the bone. Radiograph tests of health include an abdominal ultrasound and nuclear renal scan. The ultrasound is non-specific for evaluating patients with the suspected urinary fistula after kidney transplantation. It will only reveal a fluid collection, and echo like image around the graft. A renal scan demonstrating extraventilation is the most sensitive method to differentiate a urine leak from other fluid collections such as lymphocyte and hematoma. A cystograph should be performed if a bladder leak is suspected.
Now, just a minute here. Uh, if you just go into the topic of kidney transplant, uh, there are many things which are very special about this topic. First of all, this is not a normal anatomy, and the kidney, the graft, is always in either the right iliac fossa or the left iliac fossa, and the space is actually retroperitoneal or extraperitoneal. Now, in order to place the kidney into that position, you have to do dissection. When you do dissection, there is always um, some violation of tissue space. Now, by violation, I mean to say that whenever you want to dissect something, uh, there are certain lymphatic channels that tend to be in the area of dissection. So they are inadvertently damaged, and that might be the result of lymphocyte. So whenever something has been recreated, which is not normally present, then you have to have a little bit of space for complications. But those complications should always be within the control of management. Now, all these complications that have been described very rightly into two main groups. One is the vascular, and the other one is the surgical or urological. Both of them are surgical, but urological is slightly different from vascular. Uh, if your mind, as a novice, as somebody who is just trying to understand the topic of transplant, if you are on this point, and this point is clear in your mind that these two kinds of complications can occur in a person having been through kidney transplant, then you are actually putting yourself into correct lines of understanding. Because what you do normally during transplant is you take kidney from a donor, and that kidney has got actually two main structures with it. One is the ureter, which you want to implant into the bladder of the recipient, and the second is two vessels, a vein, a renal vein, and a renal artery. Now, there might be multiple renal arteries also, but the way they are put in is they are anastomosed to the external iliac, common iliac, or internal iliac vessels of the recipient. And the kidney rests on the iliac bone in the iliac fossa. Now, this is all something which is abnormal in the sense that normally this space is not there. You have to create this space so that the kidney should be as close to the bladder as possible, and you can easily anastomose the ureter to the bladder, as I've said earlier on. Now, when you do this thing, you are actually putting a new kind of anatomical challenge to the patient. And this challenge is again in the light of immunosuppression, which you want to have in the recipient so that a foreign body or an organ from the donor is actually being accepted in totality. Now, there are two wars at this point which are being fought within the body of the recipient. One war is on the front of immunology, because self and non-self is actually the concept, and the body rejects the non-self. The second battle is between the procedure that you have done, between those anastomotic lines that you have created, and the body responses. So these two kind of complications can occur, one through immunology and one through normal process of your reconstruction, if you allow me to say. So if you want to discuss this topic, you have to be very clear what's going on when we talk about transplant. Uh, the process that goes on in the recipient, and also the process that goes on in the donor, because when you take a kidney from the donor, actually one half of the total capacity, renal capacity, is gone. So the other kidney which you left behind should be near normal or just normal, but then it has to take the function of the kidney that has been gifted to another patient. So there is um, the challenge which is given to both, one the donor and the other one to the recipient, and these challenges are totally different challenges, which are more in case of recipient as compared to one that is the donor, but both of them are having challenges which they have to face. This point has to be clear in everybody's mind. Yes, you can proceed, Ehsan.
Since the renal scan in contrast, already extravasation, urinary fistula, this is the where renal scan without contrast extravasation. There is no fistula. Studies with GTPA or MEC3 are the one who will advise on vascular phase and functional phase and expiratory phase. All parameters are important in the evaluation of the trial. A surgical complication of kidney transplantation, the urinary fistula are observed by scintigraphy and accumulation of peritoneal pressure outside the kidney. In case of hematoma, other surgical complications show an area of low concentration of pressure near the kidney, which may cause displacement of large structures such as vessels, ureter, bladder, and collecting system obstruction. The diabetic diagram may help elucidate this issue because the transplanted kidney has the same performance as native kidney scintigraphy. Disruption of urinary tract in the renal transplantation of the clot dysfunction requires rapid diagnosis and treatment. Urethral leakage, still careful and accurate diagnosis of the exact cause and site. It is important to know if the problem has a physical cause such as leak or an obstruction and is not associated with acute rejection episodes that require specific treatment. Surgical treatment has to be performed in all patients except those presenting with minimal extravasation at the urethral transplantation site and are clinically stable. This group was initially treated by urinary drainage. In case of unfavorable outcome after clinical treatment, surgery is indicated. Surgery is the initial approach for leg extravasation or when leak arises from the mid or upper ureter were suspected. We use the same incision of transplant to assess the fistula. The type of surgical reconstruction is based on intraoperative evaluation of the extent of the urethral necrosis and local and systemic condition of the patient at the time of surgery. Primary reconstruction with the ureter of the recipient or a new urethral transplantation are performed potentially in local and systemic condition allowed. If local or systemic infection are present and the patient is clinically unstable, and urethral ligature associated to nephrostomy can be performed. Urethral stripping alone is used exceptionally. All patients receive prophylaxis therapeutic antibiotic according to the antiviral of the collected fluids. The need for immediate open operative surgical intervention has been replaced to large extent by early endourological intervention. The placement of percutaneous nephrostomy can be divert a leak or relieve obstruction and allow a more definitive diagnosis. Endourological management can select patient from whom the likelihood of successful non-operative management is good. In few cases, percutaneous access can be offered long-term treatment with chronic stent management. percutaneous technique like nephrostomy associated to anterior ureteral stenting work in 40% of a much selected group of patients presenting with small fistula from distal ureter. Early open surgery is preferred approach. Terminolateral anastomosis of the blocked ureter or pelvis with the ureter of the recipient can be used as technique for correction of urinary leaks.
Now, at this point, can I ask all my colleagues, do you understand what we are discussing, or is it something which is very difficult? Because there are a lot of things that have been put forward. If I ask Faizan, do you understand what's happening here?
So it's quite
Difficult.
new. Yes.
Yes, this topic is very difficult, even to anybody who is a senior resident in urology, because what the challenge transplant poses to anybody who is a resident or who is a fellow, or even to the senior, say senior consultants, is actually something which is a combination of a lot of procedures, of a lot of ways to think about dealing with complications. It is not something which is straightforward. For instance, if there is a stone, you do away with the stone by means of pylonotomy or PCNL. It is not as straightforward as having, if a kidney has got a tumor, you just take out the tumor by means of partial nephrectomy, or you do radical nephrectomy. Now here what happens is, first you have to judge, as I've said earlier on, everything is being done in a patient where there is immunosuppression. Now this immunosuppression is at one hand beneficial because it makes the patient accept an organ from a donor who is a different person, and the organ is from a different person, from a different, maybe very close in genetic makeup, but even then it is from a different person. The second challenge which the body is facing is this immunosuppression will not cause the normal process of inflammation to go on like a normal process. It will rather hinder the process of inflammation. So the healing process, which needs fibrosis and other things, will also be delayed when you do immunosuppression or when you create immunosuppression. So a surgeon has got a lot of challenges, and he has got a lot of thinking to be done in order to do something for any complication. First of all, what is needed is there should be no complication. Once the complication is there, we have to devise a strategy to minimize its fallout effect, and then we have to repair the defect. So it's not very simple, it is very complex, and it challenges your thinking process also. It challenges a lot of skills also. So what we are trying to understand at this point in time, this is a presentation by a junior colleague, and we are all juniors, as majority of you are. But just listen to the topic, listen to the complexity of situation. Even if you don't understand the nitty-gritty of the subject, this is just an introduction to something which is the final, maybe the final boundary or one of the final boundaries of urology. So just take it with a pinch of salt, all these things that have been discussed today. If anybody wants to say anything, yes, Faizan.
Yes, sir. I just want to say it's but my thinking on this topic is like it's not just we take a kidney from a donor and just we place it in the recipient. It's just multiple steps. We plan something and we don't know in the end we have to change our plan according to the situation.
Yes.
Multiple, but I think it's not just a simple procedure. It is a multi-dimensional procedure. What we get, like we do the fistula and something we repair it, it can be done or it can be undone. according to the scenario. Different patient, different scenario.
Rightly said. Rightly said. Yes, please proceed.
Some groups use terminal anastomosis with the ureter of the recipient with good results, but can result in uretero-hydronecrosis of the native kidney after ureter ligation for reconstruction. Ureteronephrostomy de novo is used for replantation defect or for small distal urethral necrosis and can fail in many cases due to the necrosis, extension, or incomplete urethral and bladder wall dissection during surgery. Urethral replantation remains an important option for urinary fistula management. Urethral acupuncture and nephrostomy is performed when there is gross infection of fossa or when the patient presents with sepsis. There is also described in cases of infected urinary fistula and to prevent distal urethral ligation and nephrostomy, the introduction of a fully catheter through the bladder wall. The catheter's balloon is inflated at the transplant renal pelvis to occlude the pyrourethral junction and dry the region of fistula. Recurrence are due to insufficient ureter dissection, leaving an ischemic stump extension of the process after the surgery or inadequate anastomosis. As documented, always leaving a double deviant stent in these cases in order to reduce recurrence. But stents do not work if necrosis extends. Recurrence will always manage surgically and anastomosis with the ureter of the recipient is the first choice. Some patients can need a third procedure due to a new recurrence showing that the necrosis can extend after surgery. And that extensive resection of ureter is frequently necessary. Mortality is directly related to the fistula or to its correction was high in early transplantation era and nowadays is reported to range from 0 to 8%. These better results are due to the earlier and more aggressive approach, reduction in amount of corticosteroid and the immunosuppressive regimes and to better antibiotic and clinical support. Routine urethral stenting to avoid fistula does not reduce significantly but incidence and its use is recommended only in special cases, for example, contracted bladder and difficult anastomosis. In some centers, the modified Grigor technique has been procedure of choice for the last 35 years, and the incidence of urethral complication has been low. These are most common urinary complications, urethral obstruction and urethral leakage. These are the most common urinary complications after renal transplantation. The incidence related in filtration varies from 3 to 8%. Obstruction may occur during the early post-operative course due to blood clots, urethral malnutrition, tight submucosal tunnel, unsuspected donor calculus, or pericard fluid collection. Late urethral obstruction generally after the first month or even at years post-transplant are secondary to chronic ischemia, which leads to chronic fibrosis and strictures. Other causes include compressive lymphocyte or pelvic masses, urethral lithiasis, and belly obstruction by urethral carcinoma or fungus spot. The clinical presentation includes pain over the cervical side, decreased urinary volume leading to oliguria and anuria, and rise in blood pressure, secondary to renal impaired function. Diagnostic test shows gradual rise in serum creatinine. The ultrasound demonstrates calcificasis or erythrophile calcificasis in most cases. Nuclear scintigraphy is necessary because the obstructive kidney also displays impact reviewing nuclear uptake a sign often present in L-block rejection. When the diagnosis is unclear, the antigrade pyrogram must be performed. It was an accurate method to define anatomically the size, degree, or constitution. The treatment must be instituted as early as possible to avoid loss of renal clot function. Initially, the nephrostomy by puncture must be done to ensure the balance of the kidney and to restore renal function to normal. The definitive treatment of obstruction is oriented according to the etiology. Elliptical stenosis at the site of bladder infiltration is more common and can be addressed by several endourological techniques such as elliptical myotomy or percutaneous urethral dilatation with balloon, followed by angioplasty and implant of the stent at the ureters. Such techniques are at acceptable levels of success, especially when treat small stenosis lesions.
Now, just a minute here. As we were discussing that transplantation is not a topic and it's not a subject to start our understanding of urology. It is something which should be taken up at the very end of surgical training, of urological training at least, in the final year of residency perhaps. Why I'm saying it? Just because the reason, as you have been experiencing in this presentation also, that it is very difficult to understand many terminologies, many aspects, many procedures, names, and things like that. Now, if I want to be a surgeon, a transplant surgeon, I have to have initial experience in many fields of urology, from ablative to reconstructive to something called vascular surgery. Unless and until I'm familiar with a lot of techniques of implantation of ureter, there are maybe three most common implantation techniques of ureter into the bladder. One is Leadbetter-Politano technique, the other one is Starzl technique, and the third one, which is most commonly done, is Leach-Gregoire. Now, you can say that for any surgeon, one technique is enough, but there are certain situations in which you have to change the technique according to the anatomy which is being explored in front of you. For instance, in many of our cases, when we start dissecting the planes, for instance, the bladder and the vessels, because we have to place the kidney into the space and anastomose the vessel to vessel, we come across an anatomy in which the dissection is very difficult, because there is the possibility of either retroperitoneal fibrosis, or there is an unexplained retroperitoneal fibrosis, or it might be because of the presence of tuberculosis and tuberculous lymphadenitis. Now, there are no prior tests which can pinpoint a patient in an endemic area like our area, Pakistan, Bangladesh, India, even Afghanistan. Here, the disease, the tuberculosis is so rampant, is so widely present, that any patient that comes to us, we don't have prior history, we don't have prior knowledge what kind of anatomy we actually will be confronting with in whenever we open up the body. So in that case, the tissue spaces will always give us a kind of a feel that this is not normal. This is something which might be of a chronic infective nature, and the most common chronic infection in our area is tuberculosis. Now, in that case, if you dissect the bladder seems to be of a smaller size. The bladder might be a tuberculous bladder also. Now, what you do, you can't just abandon the procedure of transplant. You have to go on the procedure, do away with a lot of fibrosis in front of you in dissection and dissecting the planes, and then you devise your reconstructive strategy in a different way, which is different from the normal reconstruction or normal implantation of ureter into the bladder. Meaning to say that you have to have not one, but maybe 2 or 3 different techniques of implantation of ureter at the back of your hand. Unless and until you have got the experience of doing it, you will not be able to do transplant yourself.
This is ultrasound showing moderate hybrid process. Ultrasound of planetary. Open surgery with reconstruction of excretory pathway is still considered the gold standard. In distal urethral obstruction or weak case, reluctant ureter, we can review the urethroneusyscopy by extravesical leak or modified techniques. If there are multiple non-stenosis of ureter or even poor vascularization, it is necessary to perform the anastomosis of the renal pelvis with the host ureter, uretropiloscopy, or the ureter with the host ureter, ureteroscopy. The last technique has a higher rate of stenosis. When the native ureter cannot be used, the body plan should be done joining the short urethral stump or the renal lumen pelvis, allowing an adequate distance to operate. This allows funneling the phlegm under the ureter, decreasing reflux and bacterial contamination during episode of infection at the lower urinary tract. Extreme situation may require a pyelonephrostomy with anastomosis, the donor urinary pelvis directly to the bladder. In this circumstance, there is direct transmission of void pressure to the urinary collecting system as well as urinary infection, leading to chronic pyelonephritis and deteriorating renal tract. Vascular complication. Although theoretically there is greater risk of surgical complications associated with living donors and recipients of kidneys with multiple arteries, actually it is not being considered more a problem in laparoscopic or open nephrectomy. There is standard procedure in many transplant centers showing no significant adverse effect on functioning and class while in medial nephrectomies. Without or with head assistant, which may lead to higher vascular extension. There is need for close attention to the anatomy of the donor due to the possibility of having 2 or more arteries and veins or early arterial bifurcation. Furthermore, knowledge of the microsurgical techniques for careful arterial reconstruction with multiple arteries and is essential for the reduction of vascular complication in this situation. Arterial renal thrombosis. The most worrisome and dangerous of vascular complications occurs in about 1% of all kidney transplant. Arterial thrombosis can reach value lower or higher in different series. Usually result from technical difficulties in removing the organ or implant. Nephrectomies and perfusion injury may occur in the endothelial layer, facilitating the process of thrombosis. The anastomosis of small vessels are of very different size or twisting or bending pressure or other predisposing factors for the thrombosis, making demands for assessing the flow space of the kidney as well as for positioning of the graft at the time of surgery. With some frequency, there is need to adjust the length of renal artery to avoid kinking of the same. A technique here is obliquely sectioning the end of the renal artery, which can reduce the risk of thrombosis and stenosis. Another factor to consider is the quality of the receiver, because the arterial embolization of the erythromatous flux predisposed to thrombosis. Lesion in the endothelial artery caused by vascular clot during anastomosis should also be considered. Other situations of great risk for vascular complication are patients receiving 3 or 4 kidney transplant, hyperacute rejection, and antiphospholipid antibodies. Clinical presentation and diagnosis. The hallmark of renal artery thrombosis is the absence of blood perfusion of the parenchyma, which can still be identified intraoperatively. In the post-operative period, the most common clinical presentation is sudden interruption of urinary flow without pain in the graft. Obstruction should be excluded from the catheter by blood clots. The renal perfusion should be evaluated by MSA renal scintigraphy by ultrasound Doppler and even with the arteriography if needed. The immediate surgical exploration may allow in these cases. Revascularization and recovery of the graft, especially if the diagnosis of arterial thrombosis is done before closing the incision. The loss of graft is most common consequences and nephrectomy should be performed in these cases. This picture is showing arterial renal thrombosis in nephrectomy problem. Renal artery stenosis. The prevalence of renal artery stenosis is around 2 to 10%, in males 1%. Clinical picture suggested by onset of severe hypertension, post-renal transplant, dysfunction, or presence of acute renal failure with prolonged NTA. With a big onset at 6 months, renal artery stenosis can manifest itself as early as 2 days and as late as 2 years after transplantation. Stenosis located in the line of anastomosis, especially in terminal anastomosis. The most frequent etiological factor is technical failure. Other etiological factors are largely the same that leads to arterial thrombosis, but acting with less intensity. Clinical picture and diagnosis. The suspicion must always occur if the transplantation started with a progressive decline in renal function, audible heart murmurs, or increase in intensity in the graft side and hypertension reflective to medical treatment. The diagnosis may be suggested by non-invasive techniques such as ultrasound associated with color Dopplers. Sensitivity is at 10 to 94%. Doppler ultrasound is useful as screening and may show an increased blood flow velocity. The arteriography still remains the gold standard for diagnosis of arterial stenosis. The degree of stenosis is considered significant when there is more than 50% of the arterial lumen. Recently, gadolinium enhanced MRI has allowed a non-invasive and efficacy comparable to the renal arteriography convention. The test with captopril with the plasma renin may be better in the diagnosis of renal artery stenosis. The therapy depends on the location and degree of stenosis. Conservative treatment can be used in cases of mild stenosis in which blood pressure is controlled with medication and serum creatinine level remains stable. Invasive procedures are indicated when blood pressure is not controllable by medication. It is progress worsening of renal function or when non-invasive tests suggest the progression of stenosis. In this situation, diagnosis arteriography is indicated in combination with transluminal angioplasty and stenting. These techniques allow restoring of renal perfusion in most cases, and its effectiveness is confirmed immediately by second angiography. Intraluminal balloon dilatation with stenting is the preferred therapy for most patients, especially recommended in case of localized stenosis and distant 1 centimeter anastomosis. Surgery is reserved for regions involving the anastomosis or the surrounding area, and in cases of early artery stenosis. Other surgical procedures are indicated when the stenosis is severe and unsuitable for angioplasty or else in disc failure. Surgical techniques include removing local resection of stricture and reanastomosis or may not be used autologous grafts, cutaneous vein or heterologous teflon in the form of patch graft or bypass, with a success rate ranging from 63 to 92% overall. This is picture showing arteriography post-transplant showing renal nodule stenosis, and after stenting you can see this. This is bypassing a renal arteries. Renal vein thrombosis. The renal vein thrombosis is uncommon but serious complication, which is with incident ranging between 0.9% to 4.5%, usually occurring in the first week after transplantation, with great potential for graft loss because the transplanted kidney does not have collateral circulation. Venous stasis causes impairment of blood flow and consequent loss of function. As causative agent related are incoagulation of the renal vein or anastomosis stricture or dehydration, venous compression by lymphocele or hematoma. Progression of ipsilateral iliofemoral thrombophlebitis should also be considered. Late cases of renal vein thrombosis have been associated with recurrence of membranous nephropathy. Clinical presentation and diagnosis. The symptom is non-specific as sudden onset of hematuria, oliguria, or anuria, accompanied by local pain and swelling of the mouth. There may also increase in diameter of ipsilateral lower limb deep venous thrombosis associated. The evaluation of renal droplet ultrasound confirmed the increase in the renal volume and absence of venous flow. In the arterial can be seen reverse diastolic flow. Although it has been reported that early surgical exploration and thrombotomy allow the preservation of the graft in cases with renal vein thrombosis. But usually the kidney is no longer viable at the time of surgical exploration due to a spread of intrarenal venous thrombosis and prolonged hypertension. In most cases, the nephrectomy is performed. A complication associated with renal vein thrombosis is rupture of clot, which may cause hemorrhage and large hematoma, perinephric, confirmed by ultrasonography, together with sign of hypovolemia and along with circulatory shock. Physical examination usually reveals bulging at the side. Nephrectomy is the standard procedure. However, in case of rupture of graft without thrombosis should be attended to check the parenchyma and preservation of the graft. This is just being renal and a second showing the renal vein with thrombosis inside the graft rupture. Lymphocele. Lymphocele is lymph collection from the iliac lymphatic vessel of recipient or the island that communicates between the transplanted kidney and blood. The average incidence of lymphocele in the literature ranges from 0.6% to 16% overall. The geology has been attributed to inadequate dilation of the delicate lymph vessel who are lying the iliac vessel are present in the eye. The method of renal uptake also appears to influence the appearance of lymphatic complications. The removal of kidney by endoscopy may prolong the lymphatic leak, requiring training for longer period. The small lymphocele are more frequent but usually asymptomatic. However, the large collection are manifested clinically in a few weeks to months after transplantation. Bulging can occur in the site of cervical bone with cutaneous extravasation of limb. In severe cases, there may be edema of lower limb ipsilateral to the graft, frequent urination due to bladder compression, and urethral obstruction, leading to hydronephrosis and loss of renal function. This this picture showing abdominal bulging secondary to leprosy. Diagnosis. The diagnosis is confirmed by ultrasound, which may show hydronephrosis, altered vascular flow by Dopplers, and qualify the lymphocyte or the presence of other collections such as hematoma or lymphoma. In case of doubt about it can be CT can be performed for confirming puncture of collection guided by CT ultrasound or ultrasound with biochemical dosage of the liquid obtained. The treatment can be divided into expected puncture and drainage or surgery. As previously mentioned, small volume of leukocyte with less than 140 ml and asymptomatic fail to resolve spontaneously without any graft damage. Larger corrections or leukocyte with clinical administration can be punctured and drained under strictly aseptic techniques and guided by ultrasound or CT. In this case, you should aim for total disappearance of the correction. If there is clinically significant recurrence, a sterile therapy with iodine, 5% ethanol or antibiotic can be performed. In lymphocyte larger than 500 ml puncture, drainage and physiotherapy are usually no more effective in case refractory or complicated. The laparoscopic lymphocyte fenestration marsupialization is the procedure of choice in many centers. The laparoscopic techniques reduce the risk of injury to the ureter or infection and demonstrate high rate of success. It is important to get a window sufficiently large to ensure patency of the ureter. When the location is not favorable to laparoscopy or in recurrent cases, the approach by open surgery should be performed, especially when the lymphocyte is located posterior and lower to the transplanted kidney or behind the platelet. In both techniques, it is recommended to perform the peritoneal cystotomy with an oval window of at least 2.5 to 5 centimeter in width, associated with intraposition of short segment of ureter, allowing a good peritoneal absorption of lymphocyte and avoiding internal hernias of bowel segment. Recently was reported that treatment of recurrent and symptomatic leukocyte by inserting a Tinkoff catheter at the site of leukocyte tunnel to the abdomen, allowing the intraperitoneal drainage. This procedure offers as advantage the possibility of being performed in the outpatient clinic without liver anesthesia with good efficacy and safety, although the number of cases reported is still small. In conclusion, the treatment of lymphocytes should begin by less invasive technique if there is recurrence or failure, proceeded to vascularization by laparoscopy or open surgery. This is ultrasound showing perimetry, hematoma, and lymphoma. This is the CT image of lymphocyte featured over here. The last one, slide. Bone publication are reported for bone problems. Bone publication are reported in 5 to 20% of transplants and are best preventive since they can cause significant morbidity and take many months to recover. Since immunosuppression delay bone healing, especially seriomas and the use of non-absorbable suture in the fascia and more conservative surgical techniques in Brocades are warranted. A closed suction pelvic plate is also helpful immediately post-transplant. Early facial defects are rare. Incisional hernia requires operative repair, scientific flesh, or halo repair required. Superficial dilations or infection can lodge slowly by secondary intentions, which may be hastened by the use of vacuum assisted closure. Thanks.
Right, Jay. Thank you very much. You see, this is a very, very difficult topic. I think one of the most difficult topics in urology. Um, as I've said earlier on, it is difficult not only from the context of somebody who wants to read it through, or from the context of somebody who wants to practice transplant. Numan, you want to say something?
Islam,
Wa alaikum salam.
very, very elaborately and detailed little. There are a lot of complications and a lot of different.
Yes.
See another subject that we that different different.
Yes. You see, what this transplant is, it should be studied after you have gone through the whole of urology many times again and again. Unless and until you are proficient in doing a lot of procedures, at least if you haven't gone through the whole book of urology, you will not be able to understand even a single sentence of transplant management or dealing with complications, or why these complications have occurred in the first place. So what transplantation is actually telling you and giving you is something to test your skill, test your personality, test your decision making power. It tests you in different ways. What I was interested in transplant when I was at the stage when you were there. For me, it was something of a magic, something which was not achievable, something which nobody would be actually interested in educating me about it or training me to do transplant. So I entered into transplant very early, just because of the fact that I was quite intrigued and fascinated by this concept of putting something from some other person into a person who hasn't got it. Uh, so for me, it was not a challenge; it was rather a mystery. And I entered into transplant, say, ward and ICU as a very junior resident, right from the very beginning of my residency, actually. So maybe other topics of urology were studied later as compared to transplant topics. Personally, I studied transplant earlier than oncology. That was a wrong method, but it was actually something which interests me, which actually, as I have said earlier on, intrigued me. So you are always attracted towards something which in some ways giving you some challenge. So I was attracted towards transplant from the very beginning, just because of the reason, as I have explained earlier, many things, and one of them was magic of how it's being done and how it's being performed, how a person is carrying the organ and still it is functioning properly. So this is one thing. The second thing is, if you want to understand the topic of transplant, this is one field of urology, like many other fields in science, which is actually evolving. It is evolving. Again, it is not at a stage where we can say that it has come almost to the 90% or 80% of its potential. Still, there are newer regimens, newer immunosuppressive drugs, which, when used, increases the graft survival. But there are also something which is a package of all these drugs. When you use them, they have got their own set of complications, which are again with the use of these drugs. So the classic regimen of three drugs, cyclosporin, steroid, and azathioprine, is now changed a little. and many newer things with newer, say, bioequivalence and bioperformance are now available, and they are making these grafts living particularly in a very good shape. Patients are now in better shape as compared to 20, 30 years back, and they have now got lesser complications, both surgical as well as medical complications. Now, why surgical complications are less? Just because the reason that we do more. We are now doing anastomosis in lesser time. We are handling the organ, particularly the vessels, slightly more efficiently as compared to 20 years back, for instance. Again, this is because of the reason that our training is now at a good, say, standard. And it was, I'm not referring that earlier it was not a good standard, but now we have got one specialist in our team, and that is a vascular surgeon. So when a vascular surgeon is part of a urological team, then again, things will improve, and things have improved. We have seen it. Our handling of vessels are now much um, efficient. So there are many things which can be said about transplant. What I like most about this topic is, again, as I've said earlier on, it is in the evolving stage. The second thing is it challenges you. The third thing is it actually examines you whether you understand a lot of urology or not. Because if you don't understand a lot of urology, you won't be able to do single kidney transplant. As I've said earlier on, you have to have the knowledge of a lot of procedures of implantation, not only of ureter, but of vessels also. There might be multiple vessels. So if you're not into vascular surgery, at least at the basic level, you will not be able to perform transplant properly. So this is a difficult topic again, and we will go through this topic again and again in times to come. Maybe in not in totality, but we will divide it into separate areas so that we'll be able to understand it more properly. But I admit that this is something which is at a later stage, which has to be done at a later stage. So any other point, Noman, you want to add something or?
Whenever there is different transfer part, the criteria we assess the patient also pretty. But the most important complications they have seen for they have observed are the leakage of the lymphoma and lymphocytes. And the more problems are already there because the patients are always exposed to the or but with a good management and experience of or these more problems are handled very effectively and carefully. And the other two things is the leakage of the lymphocytes. These things need particular attention because the handling of these is another thing and how they occur. The mechanism that you need how they occur. That is quite interesting. So you were saying that the recruitment of students has been going from as a family technology was and the device. It is changing day by day. I think that should, we need to lead this again and again.
Yes. Yes. Very interesting. Any other person wants to say something? Yes, please. Yes, Rafe?
Yes, sir. Cannot was just a very new thing for us. It's very complicated. I think we should give more time to this topic.
Yeah.
Something very new.
Yes.
Very difficult.
So I saw two hands raised. Who were they? Please come forward.
Well, I wanted to ask a basic question.
Yes.
whenever I see the picture of transplant in like some textbook or something, basic question comes into my mind. Why this non-functioning kidney is left in the recipient? As we know, there's a new donor kidney, we transplant new donor kidney in the donor, and why this non-functioning kidney is still there? And the recipient has the 3 kidneys. That's the basic
Yes.
thing that's coming to my mind.
You see, the first principle of modern day surgery is you don't want to mutilate, you want to conserve. That's the principle. So by mutilation, what I mean is if there is an organ which is non-functioning, if you want to take it out, there has to be a purpose why you want to take it out. The kidney, to my understanding, has got 2 functions mainly. One is the filtration function, and that is the filtration of excess solute and solvent. That's it. The second function, which is again the bigger function, is the endocrine function. The kidney is involved in a lot of things, particularly vitamin D metabolism, for instance, in making erythropoietin, for instance. So all these things, they do matter. Now, when the kidney function is disturbed, the kidney function is disturbed from the angle of filtration first, but the endocrine function still remains. Even if you have got a 10% functioning kidney, the endocrine function still is intact. So if we remove the kidney, we are actually putting the patient another challenge of the endocrine deficiency. So if the person has got the ability to make a lot of things from that angle, I think he should be given the benefit of leaving behind a kidney which is, to all purposes, is non-functioning. Now, if a kidney is a culprit of having intractable proteinuria, if the kidney is a culprit of having covering a lot of space, for instance, in polycystic kidney disease, then that kidney has to be removed. Now, if that kidney is the seat of, say, hyperrenin, in a lot of renin secretion, then this is the seat of hypertension, then this has to be removed. Otherwise, for all practical purposes, there is no point in taking out the kidney. Now, sometimes when there is an infective focus, pyonephrosis, or if there is a calculus within the kidney is removed. So besides these 3-4 mandatory indications of removing the kidney is not removed. So that, yeah, any other point? Right, so if there is no point, we can just call it a day. We'll meet tomorrow again with a new topic, and hopefully this topic, surgical complication or transplant, we will do it again and again many a times in times to come, in years to come, particularly when we have got enough knowledge of actually understanding what we are talking about. Thank you very much. Hafiz.